Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, and in today's video, I want to talk about something that people don't really say too much about. And it's all of the teams that, in my opinion, you should not be building in this day and age in Marvel Strike Force. Now, some of these in this video are going to be very surprising. I know that there's going to be people, in the comments section who are going to say, Boilon, you're absolutely crazy. Now, the first thing that I want to point out is that this is a video that is more intended for newer and some mid-game players. It doesn't really matter that, the teams that I'm going to point out are probably teams that have already been built by people at the top. So those people who are commenting that doesn't really matter because you've already done it. I've already done it. This is to warn people that are coming up the way that there's a lot of teams that you don't need to bother thinking about because you really want to make sure that you're keeping up with the new characters, the new teams, and the new meta. At least if you care about the meta, because if you don't, then you can go and do whatever you want. But, this is basically me telling you that there is a cutoff point for characters and teams that you don't need to really consider about, because if you think too much in the past, you're going to constantly be behind. So if you're ready to go, everybody, then let's boil this down. And now, I want to start here in this what I call the Marvel Strike Force character spreadsheet that I have. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. So I do this, I basically have a whole bunch of stuff. The character, when they got released, when they become farmable, when they're available in orbs, Red Star Store, etc. I bring this up every now and then. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because I want to take a look at early 2022, last year. And I kind of want to start there. And I kind of want to go over these characters and why you should not be doing these characters, why some people think that they should be doing them, but you don't actually need to. And we're going to go over systematically kind of from here, because anything past that you probably should not be. There is a timeline cutoff, in my opinion, of when characters are relevant. And they're actually being less relevant for a shorter, they're being relevant for a shorter period of time than they were in the past. Oftentimes in the past, like I'm talking about a year and a half ago, you could probably get investment with a team for a good year and a half. But now I'm feeling that either they're getting replaced, or you just don't need them as much as you think they do. And some people have a bad habit of just not being able to let things go. I remember a video when people were still saying that you should build Infinity Watch. And I was saying, no, you shouldn't build Infinity Watch because they were just too old. And it's just because resources are finite. If you saw my gold video, then you would also know that you only get so much gold and resources per month. And so you can't allocate that to year-plus-old characters without getting behind on the newer stuff that you should be paying attention to. So that's why we're going through this step by step. I know there's going to be people in the comment section who disagree with my analysis, but it is my analysis and you're here watching my video. So hopefully I can guide some people who want to be guided in the right direction. Now, let's start off with Web Warriors. Flat out no. Now, why you wanted Web Warriors in the past was for the Pestilence Scourge event. Now, if you watched one of my other videos, depending on how long you've been around on my channel, I had this one particular video on my channel that I want to point out. It was called Don't Build for Scourge Events, Focus on the New Meta. So in a lot of ways, this is like a part 2 version of that video, but that was basically me saying that you should not focus on the characters that are required to do the Scourge events, because you can get away, I don't know about now, but they were being run fairly frequently, usually every like 6 weeks, 2 months kind of thing, and that you would be able to get an unlock that way, without even having to build these characters, because you would do difficulties up to 4, and you would be able to eventually get them unlocked, about 100 shards or so each run, and you wouldn't need to build and waste your resources on some of these characters. So that's how I still feel about Web Warriors. They're essentially defunct, other than the Scourge, and it's not worth building just for that. Now, Young Avengers. This was the February 2022. We had the Young Avengers team, and it's pretty much the same thing. Also, the Dark Hunters, same thing as well, because they were used. The war teams, both of them are war teams. Both of them were used in a variety of Scourge mechanisms. Would not do that now. I would not bother to build any of them now. Unfortunately, I love the Young Avengers. I love Squirrel Girl, but these are characters that you don't even need to bother thinking about. There's very little. I was going to say maybe Squirrel Girl for Dark Dimension, but I think that in the horizon we're going to have better city characters. We have some coming pretty soon anyways. Now, in the March patch, this is going to be interesting. People are going to be wondering, well, what does Boilon think about Darkhold? Don't build Darkhold. Do not build Darkhold. Do not build the Darkhold team. Why? This is because they're too old. We need to focus on the new meta. Now, there's a lot of implications by me saying for you to skip the Darkhold team. There's a couple, and we're going to go through them. So, number one is, obviously, you are not going to be able to get Apocalypse. Yes, that is me saying that if you are nowhere near Apocalypse at this stage, don't bother. There's no point in thinking about them. These characters are getting destroyed everywhere, pretty much. They're getting nerfed in Cosmic Crucible on a regular basis. They just don't serve as big of a purpose in the game anymore. That's Evil Strange, Wong, and Agatha. Now, Morgan Le Fay, that's a different story. If you want to slowly build Morgan Le Fay standalone, I think there's still value in that. But I would not build the rest of the team. Now, here's the problem, though, right? And so if you don't build the rest of the team, you're not going to be able to get, you're not going to be able to get the empowered versions of the abilities. What does that do? That means that you won't get the buffs, the passive buffs and the things like that to associate with the rest of the Horseman characters, because that requires you to do difficulty 2 of the saga, the Scourge saga, which allows, or Pestilence saga in this case, which allows you to get those upgrades to the abilities, and that requires gear tier 15 on the entire Darkhold team. That's a lot of gold to invest on this. I think that the only reason, because you need those ability upgrades to allow her to work with the rest of the team. If you're not even bothering with Apocalypse, then it doesn't matter. Then you don't even need to bother about that. It doesn't really matter. It just means that you won't be able to use, say, Morgan Le Fay with Red Hulk on the same team to kind of share those buffs. But there's a lot of value in the character standalone. She's a strong character. So I would definitely build her standalone. But I would not build her, though, with the rest of the team, because you're wasting a lot of resources that are probably going to come to bite you in the ass pretty soon. I think there's going to be more Mystic characters on the horizon. We haven't had a lot of Mystic characters, in a row, and outside of Quicksilver, I guess, but there's not been like a team of Mystic characters, or even a big group of Mystic characters. Firestar is, there's Gwenpool, of course, but, Firestar is Mutant, and there just hasn't been a full set of Mystic characters, which I think will be on the horizon in the not-so-distant future. So Darkhold is just a bit of a waste of resources at this time. Let's jump back. Madeline Pryor, hard skip. Don't even bother. A-Force, hard skip as well. Don't even need to talk about it. They were for the Famine, Scourge. Don't even bother. War. We don't talk about war, right? It's like Fight Club. We don't talk about war. Alliance War is garbage. Don't build for Alliance War. If you watched my gold video, you would know that there's only enough resources to basically go around to like 1 or 2 game modes. And so for me, that's going to be raids. If war is your favorite game mode, have fun, have at it. But it's just really not worth it otherwise. You need to really keep yourself to 1 or 2 game modes. And so for me, that's like raids and like half of Cosmic Crucible, I guess. Because there's some degree of fun for me in there. But I don't get a lot of fun out of Alliance War. If you do, that's great. But this is just my opinions and this is my analysis. So A-Force is a skip. Unlimited X-Men, also a skip. Ironically, because I just said that Cosmic Crucible is sort of my second go-to after raids, still going to be a skip. So for the same reason that A-Force is, they've really tumbled. Unlimited X-Men is not nearly as good without the Age of X buffs as they were in the past. But I would still recommend at least gearing Rogue standalone. Believe it or not, there's still some value in her having her upgraded. That being said, she also does have a broader X-Men tag, so I would not be surprised that down the line in the future, if there is some mix and match that you could do with Rogue. She is a legendary character as well. And these characters have also, the Horsemen, have been known to be part of some of these, special events that you could use them in. So I would not be surprised if that remains the case. That being said, you could probably still get a fair bit of value in a hybrid team, especially if you're a newer mid-game player that doesn't have all these teams. You just can't afford to go back to a year-old team. I think that they're falling. They're getting beaten by a lot of, other newer characters as well, and that you don't need, and it's just a lot of mutant gear to put into one team. Which we'll talk about a better team that you can put that resources in because you know what game mode that I prefer. So yes, you can build Rogue standalone. For the most part, in this list, we're going to talk about that Horsemen's are, I would say, safe to build standalone. The teams, not so much. They're sliding, all of them, and for all their various intended uses. Let's talk about, and the other reason, actually, Agatha and Sunfire, still not fireable. So even if you wanted to complete the team, there's a good chance that you might not be able to because neither Agatha or Sunfire are available for free-to-play players outside of getting lucky in orbs, and that's just not fun. Mighty Thor and Valkyrie and the Hero as Guardians. This was a big regret on my part. I think I upgraded them far too high for the War Scourge, and like I said with the other Scourges, don't build don't build Scourge specific teams. Don't need to bother. They come around frequently enough that you'll get the characters unlocked anyways. Bionic Avengers. I actually think this is a pass as well at this point, because they're kind of sliding. They're going to be sliding in the Incursion raid. I think they're going to be equivalent to what Astonishing X-Men was in the old Doom 2, was it? Or even Doom 3, I don't even remember now. But I think that you wouldn't really bother to gear these to a high degree. If you want to do them temporarily for some of the raids that you're doing right now, like your tier 14, have at it. But I wouldn't go any crazy amount of upgrading with these characters. I think that we're going to be seeing a new Incursion raid tech team in the not so distant future. So keep an eye out for that. Now, for Gamma. This is a tough one, because I actually thought that the Gamma was one of the best, well-rounded teams out of all of the Horseman teams that exist right now. Unfortunately, they've been recently nerfed, or they're getting nerfed, sorry, in Cosmic Crucible Season 3. I think that's going to cause them to slide a little bit more. There's already teams right now, including hybrids of the New Warriors, not even New Warriors, Cloak Dagger and Deathpool, with some other characters that can beat Gamma on Crucible defense anyways right now, and they're going to slide even further when it comes to Season 3. I do think that Red Hulk is a really great character. He is a really great character standalone, and I think that you should build him. But I don't think that you need to build a wider team. I don't think that you need to build Abomination, Hulk. I don't think that you need to build Hulk, but if you want to, go have at it. And She-Hulk is a huge waste of resources. She-Hulk is a really expensive character to build, and so some of these characters like Brawn, She-Hulk, and Abomination, don't think you need to. If you don't have them geared up already, I don't think you need to. I don't think you need to bother. And so basically what this comes down to with the Horseman teams is that I don't think that that you should be chasing Apocalypse, but B, I also don't think that you need to bother gearing up the wider team of the Horseman characters, because that'll actually alleviate a ton of resources that you'll have to be able to focus on the newest and current meta, which is really important going forward, is identifying which characters to focus on and which characters that are perhaps skippable. There are actually skippable characters, and we're going to come up on some of these. So Mr. Negative and we're getting up to Spider Weaver. So Tangled Web was really good. They're still pretty good. I would invest in Spider Weaver and Spider-Man 2099. I would not really invest that much into Spider-Man Noir. It's probably pretty skippable. Mr. Negative, as much as I love Mr. Negative and I love my Taskmaster, that I did slightly build this team even though I hate war, I think this is a pass for most people at this point. Iron Man Zombie, I think that's also a pass at this point. If you're a newer mid-game player, you may not even have him, because the offers are very limited and they had that one event back in October around Halloween. Black Panther and Nakia. So the War Dogs was also a pretty big skip on my part, actually. I think I covered this in a previous video, but when it comes to Wakandans, I didn't actually bother to build them at all, really, outside of Shuri, which I did for Dark Dimension 6. So, and this hasn't hurt me in any way. This has not hurt my game's progression, my roster's progression, by not having them. So they're going to get, I think they're going to slide even further. They're already getting beat pretty easily in Cosmic Crucible with other teams. Actually, even Darkhold, which I'm telling you not to build, but I mean, Darkhold can still beat this. So it's not a big deal. They are a Scourge team as well for the Death Scourge. But again, just like all of the other Scourge events, they're going to be coming by so frequently that I don't think that you need to really, have to build a Scourge team, in my opinion. But, and it's sad, because I'm basically saying, most of 2022, you don't need to bother building. And maybe that's a sad state of affairs with the way that the game is existingly. But we're going to be talking about a set of characters that I do think are worth building, because it's one of my most important game modes. And this is going to be raids. So I do think that the Death Seed team is worth building. And that's interesting, because I just told you not to pay too much attention to the Scourge requirements for the Death Scourge. Now, the two main teams that you need for the Archangel Death Scourge is Bionic Avengers and Wakandans. If you're wanting to do difficulty 5 on one of them, I would actually probably go for Wakandans over Bionic Avengers, even though I just said not to. But it depends on how fast you want to build those shards. If you're in the camp where you just don't care how fast you get them unlocked, because you'll get them within like 2 Scourge runs. Don't get me wrong, because it's a 3-star unlock. It's not very hard to do. So if you're okay with that 3-star Archangel, then just do that. And don't bother building the Wakandas team. If you want to get shards a little bit quicker, though, then you might need to build the Wakandans in order to do that. And I think that at this point, it's just a little bit better to do the Wakandans than Bionic Avengers, who are basically falling off and who are going to have a new team in the near future. And this brings us to the current meta, essentially, after that. Because Death Seed is still part of the current meta. I think they're actually going to get some more usage going forward in Cosmic Crucible. And we'll have more to talk about in the near future as well. And then we have Rebirth, we have Masters of Evil, and then we have Invaders. And this is pretty obvious that they're all highly meta right now. You need to build all of them. And this is where your resources should be going. If you haven't built Rebirth yet, you should. If you haven't built Masters of Evil yet, you should. To a decent degree. My Kang and Titania are about gear tier 14. I put way more resources into Ultron and Kang, because Kang's amazing. And then I put some pretty decent investment into my Invaders team already at this point. And so that's basically where you should be considering. You should be doing the Death Seed. You should be doing some of the characters, some of them, like Spider-Weaver, 2099, that's going to still give you value. And frankly, if we go way back, then Cersei and Icarus is still on that list, in my opinion. They're very solid characters that you should be focusing on. And I should have started there probably. But there's so much that you don't need to bother thinking about that. And the reason why I've kind of done this for all of you is just to showcase that you should be really considering essentially from the last 6 months onwards. So Dark Beast was at the end of November. We're entering May pretty soon here. So I would say that's about 6 months. And that's where you should be focusing on in terms of the game's meta, in terms of how far back that you should be considering. There are a few, of course, select examples that you should probably be considering outside of this, but I would not go further back than 6 months unless it's completely necessary and those characters are either super OP, like in the case of Spider-Weaver, or in the Eternals case, because they're very helpful in just the broader range of the game, assuming that you have them unlocked. So let me know. I know I'm going to get some crazy comments down below telling me that I'm insane, but I'm kind of used to that by now. I'm just trying to keep everyone focused. I'm trying to keep everyone with the idea and knowledge that, resources are finite. Gold is finite, and you really need to focus on the newest stuff to get the best value out of them for the content that's coming up. We're learning that we need to have these characters built up to a decent degree already, like the preview event, which you need gear tier 13 for the Invaders characters, which did actually produce net positive results, in my opinion. You're going to need these teams anyways. So the best thing to do is to identify which characters you could skip, though, to kind of try and save some of this resources, because when it comes to reworks, that's a whole nother separate question, because there's, lots of other gold that you're going to need to spend on other characters. But if you keep an eye on this channel, I'm going to help guide you through which characters are useful, which characters that you should be gearing up, and which characters you don't need to. And that was the whole point of this video. So that's the end of here. And until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.